Hello and welcome to the Gnostic Warrior radio show and podcast, broadcasting from GnosticWarrior.com in San Diego, California, to around the world. I'm your host, Mo, and today on the show we have Eric Dubay, the author of The Atlantean Conspiracy. Eric is a 30-year-old accomplished American martial artist living in Thailand, where he teaches yoga and Wing Chun part-time while exposing the New World Order full-time. His book, The Atlantean Conspiracy, tracks the secret societies, symbols, conspiracies, and bloodlines that have ruled over mankind for thousands of years. So how you doing today, Eric? How's things treating you there in Thailand?
Good. Just woke up. It's 9 o'clock over here in the morning, and I guess it's 6 o'clock yesterday for you over there, 6 p.m.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good day tomorrow.
You know, this is one of the hard things in doing a podcast on your own that's worldwide and getting used to all the different time zones. And that, you know, I've made some mistakes in doing this, and you being in Thailand, you know, our time zone differences are tremendous. Like you said, you're a day ahead of me in the morning, and I'm here at 6 o'clock at night, where it makes it kind of rough because I do my podcast in my house with my family. And towards the evening, you know, the wife's cooking dinner, and I have the kids running around crazy, being loud. So please forgive me if they start acting up and you guys hear them in the background here.
Oh, no problem. They can join in.
Yeah, there you go. You know, before you had started writing your book and got into, you know, the martial arts that we're going to talk about, what you're doing now, and living in Thailand, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and what you did before you got into the research and work you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. I was born in Maine and lived in Portland area for most of my life. I went to college for philosophy, got a philosophy and English degree. My best friend in high school was a Thai guy, and he took me on vacation to Thailand for a month in my junior year of college, and I really liked it and had been wanting to travel anyway once I got out of college, and I thought, I think I'll try teaching English over in Thailand for the first year. So I spent my senior year, I bought a bunch of books and tapes and whatnot and taught myself the Thai language, or as much as I could for that first year. And then after my senior year, a few months later, I sold everything I owned that didn't fit in 2 suitcases and a carry-on, and came over here and got my CELTA English teaching certificate while I was here, and then started teaching at a language school for a year. Really enjoyed it here, and then I ended up I've been here 9 years now. Originally I was thinking I might kind of bounce around and teach English in different countries, do a country a year, something like that, but I really found a place and a culture and people and food and weather and everything to be more to my liking over here, and my wanderlust kind of faded, and I just like living here now.
No, that's an awesome story, you know, coming from the United States and then just going there with a friend you had met in college for a month, and then boom, you sell everything, 2 suitcases, fit everything in 2 suitcases, and you leave forever. What was the main reason, do you feel, that you fell in love with Thailand? And was it just the culture, everything, the health?
There was both. First of all, there was a feeling of America pushing me away. Just a lot of the things you and I probably criticize on our websites about America. I didn't have a coherent sense of it at that time so much, but it was more of a feeling, and having explored other cultures a little bit, I felt like there were other ways to live life, and other ways that life was being lived elsewhere that I'd never experienced, and I wanted to find out. And so when I came I've traveled a little bit to Laos and Cambodia, I've been to Bermuda and the Caribbean with my parents, I've been all over North America. I still haven't been to Europe or Africa or several other places, but I found a pace of life that I like over here. Eventually, I'd like to move out to the countryside. There's beautiful mountains and islands here. Right now, I'm still in Bangkok, which is nice for a city, but it's definitely not a city boy. Um,
I would take it just like here in, I'm in Southern California where, you're near the ocean or the major cities. It's just heavily congested and, the competition for real estate is fierce and, from getting a house to everything and having silence, it's really hard with all the businesses and the freeways and the streets. So I think, I'm at that time in my life like you are now where I'm exploring the countryside as well. I'm looking up into the mountains and getting away from the city. Even though there's parts of it that I love, I'm also realizing that, in order to further have growth with my soul and spirituality, I need to have more silence and get away from all this bad energy. Is that what you feel as well?
Definitely. I think that's part of a solution to a lot of society's problems too, is getting back to nature and getting away from these cities. I think without the kind of monetary system that we have, cities wouldn't really be so prevalent. People wouldn't congregate into cities. I myself use the excuse all the time that the only reason I'm in Bangkok is because I don't have enough money to live in the countryside right now. And I wonder if a lot of people are the same way. They're living in cities because the only feasible work that they can really do is here in the cities, when their soul would like to have a little homestead somewhere, grow their own food. I've been watching a lot of tribal videos and different things. And people, their lifestyles it's a lot slower. It's a lot different. You can't just go out and buy some clothes. You got to sit there and make it or trade it or whatever. But this day and age, I mean, all you got to do is be a farmer or have some trade that are skilled at enough that you can trade your goods with other people. I think living in that kind of style is much more what we're supposed to be doing. I feel like we're living in a false state of being, like just cities in general. Like I said, I don't think. Imagine if barter and trade were the only type of economy. I don't think cities would really exist.
Yeah. And I think that this goes along with, of course, the work that you're doing now, with your book, The Atlantean Conspiracy, and exposing the global elite from Atlantis to Zion. I assume that money plays a big part in this control. And us even writing about it, we're under the same grips and the same chains that everybody else is.
Definitely, yeah. Can't escape it. Like I said, I wish I could, and maybe it's kind of an excuse because I know plenty of people do. They just go out in the countryside, homestead, just build a place. I was watching a video of some guy living without money for years now. It is possible, but it's hard.
Yeah. No, I think it's just a plan, just like you had the plan in writing your book and doing what you did there in the Philippines and leaving the United States. It's just kind of planning it. And I think, where you are at and I'm at personally is just kind of planning it in our head, and eventually we'll make it happen because that's what we do with our lives. Exactly. And it's, I think we need to get back to that. And I see our society eventually getting back to that way of life, but it's going to happen once this world is ended, whenever that's going to be. And again, we'll talk about some more of that. I want to go back a little bit to Thailand before we get into your book, because you escaped the United States. And then I, read on your blog and read this before a couple of years ago in regards to the military coup that had happened there in 2006. And, you had said it was a rigged election. And then there was several demonstrations in 2007 and 2008. And then, of course, now we're seeing these same things happening. So it seems like you went to escape the New World Order, but you found them again in Thailand, right?
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a different version of it over here, but a lot of similarities to what's going on all over the world. Kind of like the false color revolutions they've been talking about in Egypt and other places. That's kind of the model that they use here. It's officially a democratic monarchy over here, just I guess like it is in England. But to me, that's a paradox, because you either have a democracy or you have a monarchy, and you can't really have either, or you can't have either. So what they do is they have a parliament, and everything goes through the parliament. But if anything passes parliament and the monarch doesn't want it to pass, they have veto power over everything. The parliament does. So essentially, it's a monarchy with the facade of democracy underneath it, like a WWF style politics, just like in America, the Republicans and Democrats. Over here, what you got is the red shirt Democrats who are loyal to the Thaksin Shinawatra, the old prime minister, and the yellow shirt royalists who are loyal to the monarch, the king of Thailand. And they play off of each other constantly. And the current protests are that as well, where you've got the yellow shirts doing a protest somewhere one day, and then the red shirts come out and they all get mad at the yellow shirts and do some similar thing. And it's just like, it's divide and conquer at its best. They literally wear the shirts and they of one color and protest against the other people. Meanwhile, most of Thailand is neither. The perception is that everybody must be a red shirt or a yellow shirt, but the vast majority, probably 90+%, don't identify themselves with either. But if you watch the mainstream Thai news or whatever, you'd think everybody must have picked a side at some point here.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because I remember when I first started, I was really anti-voting and anti-establishment growing up here in America. I grew up a punk rocker, and I really didn't vote. I thought everything was a joke, even though I didn't know what I do now as far as the knowledge and the research into the global elite and the controllers and so forth. I always knew, but when I started voting, everybody was asking me what I was, and I was like, I'm just going to vote for the president who I feel is representing me. And then, no, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. No, you're a damn liberal, I was just like, you know what I mean? And so I could relate to that. But again, I ended up leaning towards a party just to answer people because I felt like I had to join them. And so I was part of that mind-controlled little slave mentality as well, even though I was breaking out of the mold. So this is definitely part of the propaganda that they used and use so well here in America. And it goes from, I'm sure, red and yellow shirts, and then it's going to go on to the micro level from there and there. And soon the Thai will forget who they were and where they come from and their religion and so forth, which is the whole goal, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, they do seem to want you in a little group so that they can prop up a new puppet as part of that group every 4 years, and you'll just vote that way instead of maintaining your critical faculty, not joining a group and looking at each candidate as an individual. But even beyond that, even each candidate as an individual, I look at it that there's nowhere in the world that we can go that there's not a country, that there's not a government. And every government does the same thing where they force compulsory tax upon their population. And politicians, soldiers, all government workers, their paychecks come from that tax money that the population is forced to pay. So in other words, all government workers are criminals. Their money is coming from that the population is forced to pay. If I don't want to pay tax, the IRS will shake me down, they'll seize my bank account, I'll be put in jail. They're going to get that money, and then that money goes towards their paychecks. So no matter how libertarian or how benevolent a political candidate is, if they're getting paid by the money that the population is forced to pay them, I don't see how anyone in that field could genuinely be for my interests if they're stealing my money. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of like you or the early version of you that thinks the whole thing is a sham and any vote doesn't matter because they're all equally part of the system just by being part of the system. I'm an anarchist, or at least a voluntarist. I'm someone who believes that there shouldn't be any government interaction in our lives unless we want it. It should be voluntary. And so taxation, of course, is a big one that goes against that. They force me to pay tax regardless of whether I want to be part of the system or not.
Yeah, and I think that, of course, goes back to Jesus and give to Caesar what is Caesar and God what is God's. I think they pretty much told us flat out what the deal was back then.
Yeah, death and taxes. They want us to know. There's only two things that are for sure. One of them is biological, the other one's political. Get over it.
And we own you on both ends, so.
Yeah.
So how do you describe the philosophy of your book, The Atlantean Conspiracy, Exposing the Global Elite from Atlantis to Zion? Obviously, there's a connection here from A to Z that I love that you make. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Eric?
Yeah. So after I moved to Thailand, I started reading quite a bit. I read hundreds of books on the conspiracy. David Icke and Alex Jones, Paul Watson, Jim Mars, Michael Tsarian, all those guys. I was reading all their stuff, and I got to the point where I just realized, like, wow, there's literally like a millennial long conspiracy of sorts that's been going on. People in power positions, religion, government, royalty, Vatican, Jesuits, Judaism, a whole bunch of things, multi-armed snake that most people have no idea about. And I just felt this responsibility basically after I'd put so much of my life into researching, figuring it out. I felt like I need to do something with this knowledge. I can't just keep it to myself. So that's when I got to work writing a book. And so and the idea was to, since I'd already read so many of them and there's so many books out there, I wanted to compile like an overview of all the different things I'd been reading. So I wanted to make it like an encyclopedia. So that's kind of where the A to Z, Atlantis to Zion idea came from, was that I wanted to cover the breadth and depth of the conspiracy, and try to look at every angle and cover every little facet, as far as I could go, which was back to Atlantis or back to an ancient advanced civilization that was worldwide. Though beyond that, I can't say much about it because it was totally destroyed. But it seems to have existed, and so that's pretty much where I take it back to and leave it as an open-ended question as to what was happening before that, and an open-ended question as to what's going to happen in the future, because now we're at a stage where world government is coming in. The whole New World Order, which I explained in the beginning of the book, is, still steamrolling its way through, and what's going to happen is going to be up to us. And that's kind of how I leave it.
So your take on the New World Order is that it's really an old world order that originated from Atlantis, basically, and now the new name would be Zion?
I haven't said that explicitly, but that's a good way to say it, because it does seem that it's somewhat of a Zionist New World Order, though a lot of links go to the Vatican and the Jesuits and Rome. The exact hierarchy, who's on the tippity top of the capstone, is still debatable in my mind. But there's definitely a group of rich psychopaths who have been leading humanity for thousands of years, them and their progeny. It's a royal thing as well. If you look at it from monarchs, I mean, and pharaohs going back, actually the same like the Bush bloodline goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and passes Roman emperors and a whole bunch of English kings and stuff along the way. So, I mean, we have had a conspiracy of sorts of familial rule over the peasantry. That's been going on for thousands of years. But now, in this century, now it's coming to a world order. It's coming into fruition. The United Nations, and the European Union, and all the countries, the nationalism is fading away, and we're coming into a international way of being, an international political and economic system. In a sense, if you look at it in a big picture, I don't think there's like immortals or reptilians necessarily, or aliens or something guiding the conspiracy for thousands of years like that. I just see, if you look at it from a long chain, it's just the progeny of psychopaths wanting power and control for thousands of years and being in a privileged position since birth to maintain that hierarchy. That kind of system, it has been going on for literally thousands of years. And if you don't know that, then the manifestation looks pretty much like one big conspiracy. And in a way it is. So I wanted to take that word back in a sense. That's why I called it the Atlantean conspiracy, because at the time the word conspiracy was been linked to that Mel Gibson conspiracy theory movie where he talks about all the same things that are in my book, but he's like a crazy guy throughout the whole movie. So for sure the mainstream media has been trying to demonized that word, and I wanted to try to take it back. So I consciously used the word conspiracy in the title of my book and website, and Atlantean, of course, because it went back to Atlantean times.
No, Eric, I'm big on that word as well. I often say that we're born into a conspiracy, and my thing on that word alone is it's a con on our spirit, and from birth they're conning us, and that's kind of the new game I feel that is being managed and waged against us. The people for us to forget who we are and where we come from, and they've got it down to a science now. And of course, with all the different players and all these different names and the Bilderberger Group, the Vatican, you got the Knights, the Jesuits, and all these different secret societies, it all pretty much leads to one, family or race that is ruling them all, and I always wondered why they call us races. There must be some type of race to the end or something, right?
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
Yeah, and if you look at the formation of the United States of America, it allegedly is a democracy and, the land of the free. But if these presidents now, such as George Bush, that you say are related to, all these English kings and back possibly to pharaohs and so forth, then it was probably a conspiracy from day one. And if, George Washington was a Freemason laying the first cornerstone of this country, it's pretty obvious that there is a conspiracy and that it's probably related to some type of royal family that is ruling over us. When you say that, you call these psychopaths, I studied history as like you have as well, and there's been some crazy psychopaths that have managed and governed over the people over the course of the last few thousand years, where, some of them are actually spoken about in the Bible. And I wouldn't say that they're psychopaths. To me, they were leading their people, and part of that is leading their race. And it always seemed like it was one race against the other, or one race wiping out that race, or one royal family kind of wiping out the other royal family. And in the interim, the people, which would be us, always kind of get caught in the crossfire, or we're just brutally wiped out when they're done with us. And in the past, that was often just, guillotines and having their soldiers released on us and, cutting off our heads, where now it seems that they're managing us a little bit more humanely. We're not getting treated like the cows that we're treating now in the slaughterhouses, but it's a little bit more humane. Do you feel that's true, or do you feel that any type of rule over the people that is not willing or free will is psychopathic?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Aldous Huxley talked about that how when he was comparing Brave New World to 1984, about how 1984 was more of an overt, in-your-face dictatorship using physical force against the population, whereas the Brave New World concept was a pharmaceutical, emotional, mental dictatorship. They call it dictatorship without tears or something, where the slaves would love their servitude. And I think we're more in that stage, and it's easier for the social engineers to maintain their control if it's not so obvious that we're slaves. So if they make it seem like there's an American dream that everybody can strive to, and anybody can be president, and we can make a difference and all this, then everybody just it's going to fall into line much easier than if they have guillotines and whatnot in their face all the time. So I think through centuries of trying this out, they've figured out that the heavy hand isn't the best method, and the soft hand that feeds and cuddles you and then cuts your head off at the very end works a lot better.
Yeah, the smile with the knife stabbing you in the back, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it just seems like as the years go on, they have more and more controls or ways to get at us if we get out of line, whether that be the IRS or taxes or anything with our bank accounts. They control us from A to Z.
Yeah.
The global leaders – go ahead.
I was just they still keep the heavy hand as the last option, and they hold that over our heads at any time if we start to really get out of line. But of course, they've got 100 different layers before we get to that stage. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd still break out the guillotines if they had to.
I agree, and sometimes I think some of these you'll see these big media guys that are all of a sudden die, or you have a guy that leads one of the leading alternative news websites all of a sudden has a heart attack outside of a restaurant. Another guy, his car all of a sudden speeds down the road and hits a tree, and then of course all these conspiracies go around, and you could just see they're probably just sitting there going, "Yep, you're next if you step out of line." So it seems like, as far as we're concerned on the lower level bloggers and podcasters and, writing our books, hey, just they're leaving us alone for the most part. But when you get big and you're out there with millions of viewers and so forth, then it's a different ball game. And that's when you'll probably and maybe get that heavy hand if you don't listen to some of those smaller slaps in your face.
Yeah, and they've got and of course they don't use guillotines or traditional. They don't just come and shoot you or anything. They use these kind of new technologies that you're talking about to get the job done, because then it becomes a mystery and a conspiracy in and of itself. So they have directed energy weapons that can kill people from afar without you knowing, and they can hack into the car's computers and shut them off remotely, and other things like this. So when you assassinate somebody in this style, obviously it's a much smarter way to do it. You can sit back and laugh and create the news, and even create the speculation, and everybody just is there with the mystery, and the effect is exactly what you want anyway. It's like I was saying, they don't use the heavy hand necessarily right away, but it's there if they need it, and when they hit somebody off in one of these ways, in everyone who's watching its mind, they're like conscious mind. They won't believe it, but in the back of their mind, they'll be like, yeah, it's possible. Maybe they did kill him, And that thought, that little mysterious thought in the back of their minds, the effect that has is that they're probably not going to step out of line. They're not going to think outside the box. They're going to just go along with whatever they've been told, because subconsciously, like Bill Hicks said, they know that all these people, the Jesuses, the Gandhis, and whatever, get him out of here, shut him up. We can't have him saying these things, We all kind of know that. But when somebody comes out and tries to show like the conspiratorial connections between all of their deaths and show that, yes, each one of these people has been assassinated, then it's like, no, that's crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah, and I think they know, just like, you have 9/11, you have the Kennedy assassination, where they're still talking about it in the news, and more big people are coming out saying that, it was a conspiracy and there was more shooters. And then, of course, 9/11, where you have some heavy hitters in America, whether they be in the media or actors, people in Hollywood, speaking and saying it was a conspiracy. In the end, it's like, who's going to end up proving it? So here we have the Kennedy assassination, 40 years later, still no one could prove anything. So I think they have shown that they could pretty much do things on national TV, have it done, and no one's going to ever figure it out or come to a complete conclusion, because they are the ones that control the conclusion.
Right, they control the officialdom of whether or not this conspiracy has or has not been debunked or has been accepted or whatnot, and until some mainstream news channel or something, or some, until it's popularly, I mean, I think it's something like 92% of Americans don't believe the official JFK story. So I mean that's overwhelming majority. But what the nature of conspiracies is such that you can easily prove that the JFK assassination isn't as the official story tells you. That's what you can prove. That's undebatable, right? It's undebatable that the story is not that there was a lone shooter from a book depository. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to try and uphold that. Even the magic bullet. I don't think anybody believes the magic bullet theory anymore. But to get to the very bottom of it, like who was the one or who are the ones that pulled the trigger, who gave them the order, were they CIA, were they Jesuits, all these kind of things. That is always going to be open to speculation. What isn't is that it's not as you were told. I think that's what's more important than getting to the exact who did what. It's more important that we understand who didn't do what, or what we've told isn't what's really happening, and that creates in us a responsibility to at least explore what might have happened, because it is pretty easy to prove that what we were told about 9/11 isn't what happened, and what we were told about JFK isn't what happened.
Yeah.
So if you just go along to get along, even though you know that that's not what happened, but you just, I'm too lazy to figure out what really happened, well then, you're what's that quote? The only thing evil needs to flourish is for good people to do nothing.
Right.
The only thing that ignorance needs to flourish is for smart people to shut their minds off, stop researching, and accept the official version of history. So you don't need to get to the very bottom of it and figure out the super truth of every nugget. I mean, I've been trying that for years. It gets tiring after a while to just to try and figure out what the exact truth is of all you've been lied to about everything. Just start there. That's you've been lied to about everything. You have to independently research and verify anything that you thought might be true. And if you can't verify it, then just stay in that muddy area, in between area of not really knowing, and be satisfied with that, because nobody really knows anything here. We're living inside of a physical system that we can never get out of, and like Gödel's incompleteness theorem states, anything within a system cannot fully know that system. So there's no way that you, me, or any of us are ever going to figure out the big question, the big everything, no matter how many books you read or how long you sit in meditation or whatever you do. As long as we're part of this system and we're in our physical bodies and we're here living this lifetime, we're not going to get to the 100% nitty-gritty truth.
What if we were, Eric? Maybe there's some kind of trigger in place by these global elite that there is a rule that's in place that if we do, or someone does figure this out, that the game's over. Maybe there's so all this research, because you and I know, you were just talking about that, when you start researching into these things, whether it be Kennedy, 9/11, or all these conspiracies, it's really hard to come to a conclusion. You could be spinning your wheels literally for the rest of your life on one of these subjects, and I think they realize this as well, and
right.
They use these conspiracies against us and put us out there. Hey, go research that, Eric. Yeah, go spend it.
Go waste your time on that one. Yeah.
So
go. Yeah. They could make it up in 10 seconds, and then you'll spend 2 years trying to figure out if it's real or not.
So that's the double-edged sword of conspiracies and truth seekers, is knowing when to quit, what truths to pursue, and then when to end and when to quit. Because in the end, I believe we're here to better ourselves, and that's you, the soul of Eric, and the soul of Mo, and all this BS, this conspiracy is here to con us out of that. So,
nice.
Yeah, that's one of my big things on being a Gnostic warrior, is knowing thyself. And all these conspiracies kind of have us looking out, and then instead of knowing and looking within, which I feel a lot of our answers come from within. And
Definitely.
Eric, yeah, you have a unique family as well. I believe your father at one time possibly was a Freemason or an anti-Mason, and then also I had read that you've been banned from various websites, conspiracy websites, such as Alex Jones and David Icke and so forth. Can you tell us a little bit about your father and how you had awoken him, and if he is a Freemason and so forth, and then get into that Alex Jones stuff?
Yeah. My great uncle is a 32nd degree Freemason. He's the only Mason we know of in the family, but my dad is pretty good friends with him, and they eat breakfast often. So he gets to try to pry a little information here and there out of him about it, though he doesn't say too much. He's told a few stories and shown a couple handshakes and He said that he doesn't approve of what I do at my website, especially the moon landing hoax material. He hasn't said why, but he thinks that that's dangerous and doesn't want me doing it.
Gotcha.
I haven't seen him for years, but yeah. So I guess he's not a practicing Mason for the past 10 or 15 years. He hasn't gone to meetings, but he was for the uh, good part of his life. Um, my dad, though, yeah, when I first started researching all this, I wanted to share it all with my dad, and I was telling him all this stuff. And I think, like anybody, when you first start figuring out that you've been lied to about everything, you're not very good at teaching other people about it. Yeah, you're not good at communicating it with other people, and I was no exception. I basically alienated him to the point that he didn't talk to me for a couple months.
He thought his son was crazy.
Yeah, and every time we talked, I was just going off on ranting about whatever I was researching and how, oh no, this isn't the way you've been told, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure I was hard selling him way too much on the whole conspiracy thing, but I was just so into it I couldn't help myself. So then eventually he came back around and he's like, all right, tell me about this loose change movie you're talking about. I was big on that 9/11 movie at the time, and decided to watch that loose change movie, and right, we actually like watched it together online. I was like this on Skype, and while we were watching it and talking about it as it was going on, and by the end of it, he had a paradigm shift. He's like, I gotta start looking into this, and he started doing his own research, and now he's just like me. He sends me emails all the time, and we talk on Skype all the time about. He listens to all these different. He probably listens to your show. He listens to more conspiracy audio than I do. He's a bus driver, so he has a lot of time on the road and stuff. He's listens to things on his iPod. Oh yeah, like I've talked before about how I made videos in a book about Freemasonic hand signs. My dad loved that, and he started waving using Freemasonic hand signs out the window of the bus. He was doing this one that I showed in a book where they put their ring finger and middle finger together and then splay out the index finger and pinky finger. And he just started waving to everybody like that. And he got 3 Masons approached him separately since doing this. One of them asked him what lodge he was in, and he's BSing him. He's like, "Oh, the local lodge." He's like, "Oh, right here in Portland." He's like, "Oh yeah." The guy just kind of stood him. He's like, "You're not a Mason." He's like, "No, I'm not." But it was funny because he just wanted to test it out because I'd written a book about how they use these hand signs to wave to each other and recognize each other in public. Actually, I had a chance to do it myself too. I was teaching at it's called the Provincial Electrical Authority here in Thailand, and one of the bigwigs came down to meet me and say hi to all the employees that were in my class. And I noticed he was wearing a big Mason ring, and so when he came over, I gave him a little squeeze on the knuckle, as is tradition of a low Mason to do to a higher ranking Mason. And he kind of looked at me and then smirked, and then went on to talking to the class. And then as he's leaving, I gave him a wave, and he actually waved to me using that same hand sign and kind of gave me a wink. I thought it was funny. So my great uncle is a Mason, but he doesn't really say much about it. Just that he's 32nd degree. He's told us a couple fraternity-like stories about how, like one that he tells is how they'd tell you you're going to get branded, and they'd show you a hot iron and have you pull the cheek of your pants down. I think you're blindfolded for it as well. And at the last second, they even hold the brand right up to you so you feel the heat. And at the last second, they switch it to an ice cold one and hit you with the ice cold one on your butt. So they do. It's very, there's a lot of weird, funny rituals like that they do. But yeah, as far as devious stuff, he never divulged any devious, goings on inside the lodge or anything really noteworthy, except for kind of playful things like that. There may be, and he's just not telling, but I really don't know.
Yeah, and your what are your thoughts on regards to the lower level Masons? You know, the 32nd and below. Do you feel that they aren't told anything anyways, and just kind of used in this conspiracy, even though they might have goodwill, that they're used for whatever whether that be money or just getting things done in the community, more on that level?
Well, I think so, because 33rd degree Freemasons like Manly Hall and Albert Pike said so in their books, that was exactly what they did with the lower level Masons. Basically, have you ever heard of getting the third degree? When somebody asks you a bunch of questions, or when they're scolding you, have you ever heard that referred to? It's getting the third degree.
Yeah.
So like to get or when you are at the third degree of Masonry, they ask you a lot of pointed questions, and I think there's an essay that you have to write as well. And based on your answers, they decide, the World Headquarters of Freemasonry decides where you go on the scale, basically. And I don't know the questions or exactly what happens, but I think that it's like a moral test, and they grade you morally. And if you're deemed to be of a certain moral character, then you'll be told that you're being promoted to blah blah degree, and then there you'll stay. And if you're of another moral character, they'll say you're promoted to such and such degree, and there you'll stay. And they'll give you gradual promotions throughout your indoctrination to make you feel that you're always going up. But I think that only people of a certain character, which I would call psychopaths. I think at the top levels it's psychopaths, and they're looking for fellow psychopaths. And if you prove to be a manipulative, cold, malicious person, then you'll be in the inner circle. Otherwise, you'll just always stay in the outer degrees, even though they'll claim to keep you rising as you go.
Yeah, and I was possibly thinking, along the lines of the presidential bloodlines and kings and pharaohs and so forth, that possibly this 33rd degree would relate to bloodlines, meaning if you don't have a specific bloodline, you're never going to reach that 33rd degree. But if you do, of course, you possibly could reach it, but that doesn't automatically get you in the door. And I know in the past, royalty had operated where, you were the son of the king, you were the prince, you were the next king, regardless of your morals, your intelligence, and so forth. And my understanding that went out the door with the beginning of this age, when under Rome and Augustus Caesar had abolished all the other priesthoods. But in another event, do you know if these bloodlines are related to Caesar?
I think I'd have to double check. I have it all in the first chapter of my book. I do believe that Bush bloodline passes through Julius Caesar.
Okay.
But I could be mistaken. Yeah, I'm not sure. You also asked me about the whole David Icke, Alex Jones thing. Yeah, I've been kicked off Prison Planet Forum, DavidIcke.com, Above Top Secret, Godlike Productions. I just got kicked off Lunatic Outpost. It's always for just writing articles or giving away my free book. So they don't want any competition in the conspiratorial arena, even if it's clear that it's free. I'm not. You don't have to pay for anything. And let's see. So with Alex, I contacted him back a few years ago when he was having on a bunch of astronauts giving the official version of the Apollo moon landing, and I asked if he'd have me or Joe Rogan was big on the moon hoax back in the day. Asked him to have me or Joe or someone else on to argue the other point, the other side of the story, because I was a big Alex Jones fan at the time, and I was just like, oh, why doesn't he know that this is BS? I wanted him to, because he had Buzz Aldrin and Harrison Schmitt and some other, astronauts on, claiming that they'd walked on the moon, and he had no conspiracy guys on to talk about the opposite viewpoint. And so Rob Dew, his producer, contacted me and he thought it was a great idea and he said he'd run it by Alex and he'd get back to me. And they never got back to me. And I contacted them several times after that and they didn't respond to me. Though just a week or two after my email, he had Harrison Schmidt on, and he admitted on air, he said, I've got all these people contacting me saying that we haven't been to the moon, and that it's some sort of that I'm covering up the fact that it's some sort of Atlantean conspiracy. So the word definitely got to him that that I wanted to get on his show, or at least have somebody on the InfoWars radio show to give the opposite viewpoint to the moon landing instead of all these astronauts' official NASA versions of the story. But they're not having it over at InfoWars. They've got a controlled thing going on there. Alex is clearly working for alphabet agencies. Stratfor, he's working for. He has people working for him who've directly out of Stratfor, which is a CIA company. He's admitted that 50% of his family works for the CIA. I have a bunch of articles. If you go to AtlanteanConspiracy.com and click on Alex Jones, I've got just a bunch of evidence that's been collected over time that he's not genuine in what he's doing. David Icke as well. Vladimir Lenin said the best way to control to lead the opposition is to control it. So I mean, if you have a conspiratorial hierarchy controlling the human race for thousands of years, you are going to have opposition periodically. And the best way to control that opposition is to lead it. And the best way to lead opposition is to mix truth in with falsehood. And that's what these controlled opposition leaders do. They tell you a bunch of great information. Maybe 90% of what they say is spot on. But then there's a 10% which is leading you down the garden path towards nowhere. For instance, with David Icke, he's got great information. I agree with most of what he says. But then, like, say, his latest book, literally the whole thing is about how reptilian aliens from Draconis use the hollow moon as a spaceship and control us through mind control beams beamed down from the hollow moon by these reptilian aliens. That's a fair description of what the whole book is about. And boy, he does a good job of, if you read it, you'll question, wow, okay, maybe. But in the scheme of things, even if that was happening, there's so much more provable information that you could go about, teaching people instead of trying to bring them off into this fantasy land of reptilian shape-shifting. I left that off. They're shape-shifting, reptilian, alien, human hybrids who came here from another star system, used the hollow moon as a spaceship, and have mind control technology from it, which they beam to Earth to mind control the human race. Now, if that's not a fantasy story to control the opposition and lead them into crazy land, I don't know what is. And that's what David Icke's been doing for 20 years now. Like he used to say, all a comedian has to do is mention my name to get a laugh. Yeah, that's your role. That's what you do. Just like we were saying, the idea of conspiracy and conspiracy theories has been so crazy for so long because of figures like David Icke and Alex Jones screaming at you about Y2K. Russians are. Did you hear that transmission of his on Y2K? He's saying the Russians have launched nukes. We're under nuclear attack. He's got a lot of BS if you go back and just look at it. Sure, he's got a lot of great things. I was totally convinced and a follower of him for years. So I mean, he's quite a good actor.
Yeah.
But he is an actor, and if you doubt that, I challenge anyone to type in Alex Jones crying on 9/11 when 9/11 happened. He's on air, pretend crying, going, "Oh, the beast is upon us, the beast of Revelations," and then like as he's fake crying, he has to come to a commercial break, and he quickly gets out of it. He's like, "Oh, Aaron, can you play Renegade music? We're gonna okay. Oh, I just can't believe." And then he goes right back into his crying routine. And I mean, he does that often. You see him screaming about like he'll go from laughing to screaming to back to laughing and smiling, and then screaming again. Like he's pure WWF uh, style reporting.
I agree. And Eric isn't that part of his charm now to you? Even though you understand, you'll actually turn him on just to laugh at him because he does make me laugh.
Oh yeah, he's a character. I definitely like listening to him, and yeah, exactly. I watch more parody videos of him now than I watch actual videos, and they give me more entertainment value than anything. So yeah, I love Alex Jones at least for just his personality and or that role that the Alex Jones role that he plays, if that's really his name.
No, what's funny is I also had somewhat of a similar experience, so I wanted to validate what you're saying here, Eric, to the audience to let them know we're not bashing him, because I know there's going to be Alex Jones fans out there as well. And I went to him. He was one of the first people. I think it's de facto. If you're researching this type of stuff, you will find Alex Jones within the first week or first month, and he'll kind of wing you in with that hook in your mouth. But anyways. Yeah. I would go to his website every day and so forth, and I had my website I was writing on the banksters, and it was called loansafe.org, and I started a forum here in America helping homeowners that were having problems with their mortgage and going through foreclosure. So that's kind of when I really started getting educated into the system and how it works and banks and money, and then finding Alex Jones and learning about the fluoride in our water and all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, whoa. And he definitely had me hook, line, and sinker. So being a blogger on my website and writing articles, I started researching some things on my own. In China, I'd written a couple articles. One was baby soup. Chinese eat dead babies, and it was an article about how the Chinese have this custom, or a certain backcountry custom, where they eat aborted fetuses in a soup type thing. And I wrote on it, and I found a bunch of information to validate what I was saying. He posted the article, and then I wrote another article on their one-child policy and what it was doing to their country. And then my last article was on how the CIA was implanting this DNA-altering killing drug into the cocaine supply. And that one really got a lot of hits and fanfare, but the comments were really cryptic, in them, and saying, hey, the last guy that wrote about this, we never saw him again and all this. But anyways, literally the day from then on, I was never allowed on Alex Jones again. My IP was banned. When I would send in articles, they would never get approved. And basically I was just nothing to him anymore, where before I was kind of like in contact with his staff, and then they banned me. So when you see this happen, I'm a somewhat intelligent guy. I go, well, I got banned because of the information I was providing. It stepped over the line.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
and it happens over and over again. You're not the only one. I mean, people have contacted me for years now with this same, versions of this exact same story, because that's what they call it a honeypot. They use to bring the bears in. Alex is a conspiracy honeypot, like you said. You'll see him after the first week, and you'll start to believe in what he's doing, at least enough to contact him and this is what happens. Then they have you, and they'll bring you into the fold, very much like masonry or something. They'll bring you into the fold if you prove useful and toe the party line. But if you go outside the controlled opposition party line at all, well, then you have to be cut loose, and you're no longer useful, And now we disavow, like MI6 or something. Disavow. This will self-destruct.
Yeah, that's what they do to us now. Instead of like cutting our head, they just ignore us, ban them. Little flies on their ass, right?
Yeah. This podcast will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
What's interesting, when I was researching Eric, I found some information that there's actually a Freemasonic site, masonic.info, that has put your father on their anti-Mason hit list. Can you know, I'm actually on that site as well. I've been targeted by the same guy. I forget his name, Ed King or something. Is that his name? I think that's his name.
That guy, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've had a few death threats from Masons over the years that I've been doing this. But this one, yeah, this is a funny one. This guy's got a website. I think he's from Maine too. Masonic info dot something, and like the biggest part of the website is just this huge list of, what do they call it? The anti-Mason hit list, I think they call it. And so it's created by Masons, and it's a list of people who are critical of Masonry, like myself and my father, in the public eye, and they even call it a hit list. But so they have everybody's name, and then they'll put a little paragraph of why they're crazy, basically, under it, because from the Masonic perspective, anyone that's critical of Masonry must be crazy. And so then they have these paragraphs of trying to, and they totally straw man myself. I can't remember what the paragraph was, but they claim that I'm, crazy in ways that I'm not crazy.
And that's an easy way to get people that are less intelligent out there. Once they see that, they start believing, hey, Eric's this crazy guy.
Yeah. I actually had a master Mason. What's his name? John something. I don't even want to give him credit, but he's on my site all the time, trying to comment and detract from things I say. And he's even written articles about like the awe-inspiring stupidity of Eric Dubay, or titles like that, where he tries to pick apart my conspiratorial research as being the ravings of a madman. So yeah, they're big on attacking character and making straw mans and things like that to try and suppress or denounce anyone that's critical of Freemasonry.
Do you think they have a big play in as far as controlling the media, the courts, and the lower levels right below the capstone? The Freemasons would be the main players doing that, do you think?
Exactly. They're the foot soldiers. They do all the dirty work. AboveTopSecret.com is absolutely controlled by Freemasons. The majority of moderators there are admitted Masons, and they're super critical and censor anything that's critical of Masonry. And that was what I got kicked off for. My final thread on Above Top Secret was a thread exposing the MM, the double M letter symbology that Masons love to use. You'll notice that the letter M for Masonry or MM for Master Mason is used over and over again, and I was just posting all the research I'd done in that, and I've been posting there for over a year now. They let me post my free book and everything. That wasn't an issue until when I posted this thread. Suddenly, all at once, they gave me, they're supposed to give you several warnings or something before they ban you. So all at once, they gave me all my warnings and my banishment, and just came up with all these old threads that hadn't even been active for, several months, and said, oh, well, this violated something that it didn't violate, whatever, and then they kicked me off. And it's clear that it was because of what I was exposing. So they were censoring pretty much. They censored the first few posts in it, the opening posts, for no reason whatsoever. And it was a admitted Mason moderator that did it. And being on there, I was on that website for hours and hours every day for a year or two, and I got to know the work schedule of the Masons there. There were literally 2 to 3 Mason moderators online for 8 hours a day, and then someone else would come on for another 8 hours, and someone else for another 8 hours. So 24 hours a day, they have Mason moderation going on there. So that's another honeypot where they, everyone finds that right away. You type in any conspiracy subject, and that's the biggest conspiracy forum on the internet. So you're going to get sucked into that, thinking it's genuine, and it's going to take a lot of your time and energy before you figure out. Like hundreds and hundreds of people have commented on my website. Again, you can go to 19 Conspiracy, click on Above Top Secret, and you'll see I've got almost 500 comments from ex-Above Top Secret people who've been kicked off of there for the same thing. You just, there's, like I said, with controlled opposition, there's a certain realm of information that you're allowed to talk about, and you can say whatever you want about fluoride in the water and certain things. But if you touch on certain subjects, you're not going to get too far. Certain subjects about, say, Masonry, about Zionism, about the Jesuits, about Judaism. There's certain about the Holocaust, about the moon landing. There's certain subjects like this that are just really touchy, and they don't want anyone getting on to them. And they'll censor and ban you, and they won't give you any reason for it. And it'll be up to you to figure out why. And when it happens over and over again from these controlled forums, you start to see the thread. You start to see how, okay, in the official alternative media, I consider myself the alternative media. There's like the mainstream alternative media, which is your David Icke, Alex Jones, Above Top Secret. There's a new accepted norm of conspiracy where you can talk about 9/11 being an inside job, but you can't talk about it possibly happening because of directed energy weapons or being a Zionist operation. You can talk about Zionism a little bit, but you can't talk about Judaism in general, or different things like this. They'll have, or you can talk about the moon landing in passing. You can ask why there's no stars in the background and why the flag's waving, but don't go any further than that. There's an accepted realm of truth, and then there's no land, and anybody who dares tread quickly finds out that there is an alternative media out there of people who've been kicked out of the alternative media, and they're now trying to scream from the fringes.
Yeah, it's either they just went back to silence in their day jobs and are sitting in silence, or they're like us with our blogs and podcasts, right, making no money and
right.
So yeah, no, I like that term, the alternative, the AA. So I think we could start our own movement. I think it's about everybody on my Skype list. There's about 30. You're my 33rd podcast. So, and what's funny is that all the people in my Skype list are just people such as yourself, because I never used it before. I never had a need until doing these podcasts where we do them around the world, and everybody's in different time zones, and the recording these conversations is a lot easier via Skype. But it's great. have this power list, so I think I have the AA already built, brother. So
yeah, we got to make the 12 steps, and we'll recover everybody.
Exactly. The unsecret secret society, right? There will be no bake sales or handshakes. So, what do you think the end goal plan is of this global elite? What did they have planned for us?
Well, I mean, a psychopath's MO is always power and control. They have no real control or balance in their inner life, so they strive to control and balance things outside of themselves by manipulating people and using their influence to make the outside world fit their twisted inside world. So it's the same thing it's always been, to have more power, more control, to the point that, I mean, what they would love, I'm sure, would be a robot-like race of humans who unquestioningly go about doing their every will. That would be their ultimate fantasy, would be to have complete, world government, complete economic control, brainwashing to the point that we don't question anything. There's no critical thought or independent thinking. It's just complete groupthink dictated by the social engineers, the culture creators, who decide how and what we're supposed to think. If they say jump, we enthusiastically ask how high. That's the end goal. They'll never get there, but that's that's the end goal, because that's just how psychopaths are. That's what their inner world is like. They don't have real relationships with anybody. All relationships are a means to an end, and their end is for them to do what they want them to do. They just use people as a pawns, for sex, money, whatever it is that they want. So I'm sure that's the end goal. It's nothing, you know.
No,
it's not that romantic.
No, it's really, to me, it's simple that, we've been governed for thousands of years. If we're not in a nomadic tribe or living in the Amazon jungle, you are most likely governed by some type of king or pharaoh or so forth. And governing the people has always been a problem. So getting it down to a science, I would think, would be the ultimate goal of this elite, which I believe we're in those times now. And you see this science spreading around the world to countries such as the one you're living in now in Thailand and everywhere, where they will implement this science, because it is a science, wherever they have control. And if they don't have control, you better believe they're going to go in there and get it sooner or later. So I definitely believe it's a simple plan. And I agree it is to manage a bunch of passive slaves. And I also believe that gets boring. So they got to mix it up a little bit, whether that be some revolutions, wars, and conspiracies that they add in there. And if you research this over the last few thousand years, there's always shifts in power, and the game has sometimes changed. So I have a little bit of hope that, there is hope for us AAs out there, that we may have our day, whether that will be in this life or a future life. But,
Definitely.
It's great to talk about conspiracies and the global elite and all that stuff. It keeps us excited and so forth. But we also need to be healthy. And that's what I love about what you do, Eric. Not only are you into knowledge and exposing truth in the global elite, but you're also into exposing health. And you're big into martial arts. Can you tell us a little bit about the martial art of Wing Chun, and can you explain what this is to the audience?
Sure. Yeah, Wing Chun is Chinese martial art, invented by a Shaolin nun, by a woman. And the idea is to use the opponent's energy against them, so that a woman can defend herself against bigger, stronger, faster opponents. And to develop the ability to use someone's energy against them, you have to develop a level of sensitivity to pressure and what to do with the pressure to a super high degree. So the second a takedown comes, or the second a punch or a kick or whatever comes at you, we learn to bridge it. They call bridging is when you touch one of your limbs to the opponent's attacking limb, and then from there you direct it off your center line. Your most vulnerable targets, your eyes, nose, chin, solar plexus, groin, everything are right along the center line. So it's important for you, as well as your center of balance is right along your center line. So it's important for any pressure that comes in, whatever it be, whether it's punch, kick, takedown, etc., for you to meet it and then direct it off of your center line, so that you won't be pulled off balance or be struck in a vulnerable area. So we use a drill called sticky hands, chi sao, to improve this sensitivity, and it becomes like so what sticky hands is they call it sticky hands because once you make the bridge, once somebody's thrown the first punch or whatever it is, you bridge it by meeting it with your limb, and then you yield to their force. So if they overcommit to their hooking punch or whatever, you meet it, and then you allow it to continue through, and you pull their arm and continue them, and force them to completely overcommit to their motion and throw them off balance. And so when you start practicing this, two Wing Chun practitioners quickly learn not to over or under commit to any motion, because any overcommitment is quickly exploited and results in a takedown or, death. We learn to get to the neck, get to the eyes, get to the most vulnerable targets as quick as we can, so that a slight lapse in judgment is enough to overtake the opponent. So sticky hand sensitivity, basically, I call it a two-person martial meditation in which the first person who thinks loses. If you're thinking about what attack you're going to do next, you're going to have holes that the non-thinking opponent is going to be able to attack. So any good martial artist is going to tell you when they're fighting or when they're sparring, are they actively planning and strategizing while they're there? Not the good ones. Nobody is jumping around thinking, okay, now I'm going to hook. Okay, now I'm going to do a front kick. Now I'm going to do that. If that's how you're fighting, then you're going to be split seconds behind the person who relies only on muscle memory and intuition instead of active, conscious strategizing. And by practicing with sticky hands, it shuts off your conscious strategizing mind, because every time you do, you get hit. You have to stay in a state of just open awareness, receptive, physically receptive. So like I said, the second the other person tries to punch you, elbow you, tries to pressure in on you whatsoever, you feel it, you allow it, but then you pull it more so in that direction, or push it, or whatever it is, whatever the case may be, depending on what they're doing. But you exploit it the second it happens. So you're like, it was created by a female, so you're like the female in a dance where you let the guy lead and you just follow. And as a self-defense tactic, it's perfect, because if you're a true martial artist, a true peaceful warrior, you're not going to be attacking anyone anyway. It's going to be used for pure self-defense. And so you learn exactly how to defend against any sort of pressure, be it from a takedown attack, even with weapons, be it a knife or a gun, or just your typical punches and kicks and everything.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that with the training and watching you do that with other people, whether that be students you're training or other experts in Wing Chun. It seems like in any given session when you're practicing this, you're literally doing, it seems like within 5 minutes, 500 or 1,000 different kind of arm touches. So I assume that you do this day in and day out over time. It becomes intuition and second nature.
Exactly.
And that's where you want to get in any martial art, correct?
Totally. That sticky hand sensitivity where you're just the slightest movement, you can exploit it. So you're just feeling for the person to overcommit or undercommit to something so that you can move in or pull them back. And eventually you get to a point where you don't even have to have a bridge anymore. You don't have to make contact, and you can already respond based on what they're starting to do. So as everyone's got their fighting stance and their footwork, and you've got those moments when you're in and out of the pocket before you've made contact, eventually a high-level Chi Sao or Wing Chun practitioner is able to use that kind of sensitivity at a distance, so that when the first attack comes in, you're already manipulating it before you've even made contact. You're already moving your arms in such a way to make your next attack in their soon-to-be open hole before the hole is even opened, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And this, when you talk like that, it reminds me of one of the best martial artists of all time, which would be Bruce Lee. Was he also a Wing Chun practitioner?
Yeah, the first martial art he practiced for 6 years as a child under Yip Man was Wing Chun. People might have seen that movie called Ip Man. That's a great movie, and the fighting in it is very true to the Wing Chun style. Highly recommend anybody watching that. IPMAN. That was Bruce Lee's Wing Chun teacher, actually. And Bruce Lee's martial art that he created, Jeet Kune Do, he even said that Jeet Kune Do was 50% Wing Chun and 50% everything else. And so my personal style is a lot like that as well. I don't want to copy Bruce and say that I'm doing Jeet Kune Do, but I started by doing Taekwondo, and I got a second-degree black belt in that, and I used to teach that back in America before I moved to Thailand. And so that Taekwondo, undisputed, is the best martial art to learn if you want to learn how to kick. It's the art of kicking. For instance, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is pretty much the undisputed martial art of how to learn to grapple on the ground. Wing Chun is the undisputed master of the trapping range, which is, and Bruce talked about there being 4 ranges. There's kicking range, And which means you can kick the other person, but you can't punch them, trap them, or grapple them yet because you're too far away for anything to reach each other except for your feet. The next range would be punching range, where you can still kick, but you can also punch now, so you've got more things to worry about. But you're not in trapping range yet, which means you can't throw elbows or knees or grapple yet. The second range is trapping range, which is what Wing Chun stays in on purpose. We like that range where it's bent arm range, where you can throw elbows, knees, clinch, takedown, punch, kick. You can do everything from that range. It's the most dangerous place to be. That's why, like in Western boxing, the second you get to that range, the referee breaks you up. In a real fight, getting to that range is when you and the opponent are at the most vulnerable. And so when you train sticky hands, you become pretty much, you create an impenetrable wall around yourself so that most vulnerable area becomes not so vulnerable to you, and you're going to dominate as long as you can keep the fight in that range. And so that's what Wing Chun people try to do, just like a wrestler or BJJ guy tries to go to the first range, range one. They want to keep it there, and as long as they can keep it in that range, they have the advantage. And back when I did Taekwondo, I'm always trying to keep people at kicking range only, because that's all we ever practice. And as long as it's at kicking range, I had the advantage. But now, since I've trained all of the above, it's my fighting style is more like Jeet Kune Do or MMA or whatever, in that if I'm at kicking range, I'm using Taekwondo techniques. If I'm at punching or trapping range, I'm using Wing Chun. And if I'm at grappling range, I'm using Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm going to flow in and out of them based on the opponent's attack, not based on what I want to do. A fight, there's infinite possibility of what might happen in a fight. And you have to be prepared to deal with whatever's going to happen. You never know if he's going to pick up a bottle, if he's going to do a running jump kick or takedown. You never know what's going to happen. And if you're planning and always strategizing, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to take down and then I'm going to do this, you're going to fall out of the moment, out of the infinite possibility of the moment, and you're going to fall into trying to make it the way you want it to be. And that might happen if you are a better fighter or you're stronger or faster. You could make that happen. But this Wing Chun was invented by a woman, and I think the philosophy of this, if you're going to learn a martial art, it should work against bigger, stronger, faster people. And if you're already bigger, stronger, faster than the person you're fighting, you don't need a martial art to overcome them. You're going to win anyway. So if you are going to learn a martial art, it should be in this receptive style like Wing Chun or Jiu-Jitsu or there's several other martial arts that are in this kind of receptive mode where you're not just completely imposing your will and your game plan at all times, but rather you're accepting what is in the moment and making it work for you. Instead of making your own moment, you make whatever is in the moment work for you. If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, Eric. And I agree with you that self-defense martial arts is really what most of us are looking for out there. I'm a practitioner of Hapkido, which is a Korean form of self-defense. So I'm real familiar with what you're talking about here. It deals with a lot of kicks and punches, but a lot of joint locks, and it kind of goes over the whole gamut. And then I've noticed, we also teach Taekwondo in my dojang, and when I'm fighting someone that's in Taekwondo, and I have a little of a boxing background before I got into Hapkido, so I'm more of a boxer. But I throw a little bit of it, all of it in, and that's what our master teaches us. He's fifth degree black belt in Hapkido, fifth degree black belt in Judo, so he has various arts. And he's a big believer in everything that you're saying, that you have to learn the different styles. Even though you might get a black belt, whether that be in Taekwondo or Hapkido or Wing Chun, you got to learn some of those other styles to be the more effective fighter and to essentially defend yourself better in a street fight if anything was to happen on the street. So I definitely agree with you. And to people out there listening, check out Eric. You have a website for this completely dedicated. Can you give that out to the audience, Eric?
Yeah, it's BangkokWingChun.com, Chun, Wing Chun.
Yeah, and what I love about that website, to the audience out there, is there's a ton of videos that Eric does for free and he puts out there where he's in, Thailand with his students, whether that be on the grass somewhere or in the studio, and he's showing you guys right there on these videos how it's done. So I definitely recommend that people that are looking into martial arts, that they look into some type of self-defense such as Wing Chun or even Hapkido and these various self-defense martial arts, because we might be coming into a time where you might need that. If there's anarchy on the streets, the kind of anarchy that Eric and I would not like to happen would be just a complete anarchism and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. That's a different type of anarchy that we're talking about.
That word has been treated a lot like the conspiracy word, and they've tried to make anarchy into meaning chaos, where what it's supposed to mean is just without rulers. There's a big difference between, in other words, in the mind of a psychopath, if we didn't have them as rulers, then it would be chaos to them. But to us, it's called nature. It's fine. We'll be okay if you guys just get out of our lives.
Definitely, in the martial arts, it definitely, I feel it helps you round out yourself and be more balanced. So, here we are, yourself, Eric, there in Thailand. You're a big truth seeker, seeking knowledge and writing books. It helps balance us out with our health and our bodies, because as we're doing this martial arts and learning them and putting our bodies into these weird positions, we also want to take care of our health, and the food we put into our bodies, you notice that, makes a big difference. Whether you're learning or seeking knowledge, the energy you have to do that, or whether you're doing martial arts, that plays a big part of that. Again, commend you on what you're doing out there, Eric. Where is the best place to find you besides that Bangkok Wing Chun website? What's your other website? Can you give that out, please?
Yeah, it's BangkokWingChun.com for the martial arts and yoga. And for the conspiracy stuff, it's AtlanteanConspiracy.com. I also have one called HappyHealthyHomepage.com, which is where I write about happiness and health. It's a new website, but I'm putting all my health material on there.
Yeah, that's cool, and I like how you're separating it. And I see that you'll of course get followers on your Atlantean Conspiracy that will find you over on the Wing Chun and follow you there, and not everybody's going to be interested in that, and that's how it works, and that's why people such as yourself and myself separate the work that we're doing. So people, we might be doing a mortgage website like myself, helping people through foreclosure that most people don't know that I do, and then I have Gnostic Warrior. But I'm not going to talk about, the conspiracy and Gnosticism with a bunch of homeowners losing their homes. So,
right.
I concur with what you're doing, Eric, by separating it, and then you're also leaving this world a more beautiful place by sharing your knowledge with everybody out there, regardless of, not making any money and being attacked by Freemasons here in the United States. You're not leaving us. You're still a brother who has left our country, who's just living there in Thailand. But to you, we're all a family. And I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us here on Gnostic Warrior and also with the world. And please keep up the great work, brother. And I hope to talk to you again in the near future.
Excellent. Yeah, I had a great time. It was good talking to you. I really dig your energy. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk, and I hope we will be able to talk again sometime in the future. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Take care, bro.
All right, dude.